Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight for this very important discussion about the City of Hazelwood's 2021 budget. For those joining us again, welcome. This is an incredibly difficult time for all of us. Firstly, I want to extend my sincere thoughts and prayers to those among us who have family members and friends directly or indirectly impacted with the COVID-19 virus. I know that many of you have been affected financially, whether you've been laid off, furloughed, or lost a business, or loss of your business, or due to the virus shutdown. I am very sorry for the stress and uncertainty you are facing with these times. This is especially true for the Hazelwood City employees. I'd like to say, as I said in our past meetings, that it is very difficult for the city council and staff to talk about cutting employees. In the past, we have been able to maintain our budget cuts to only city services that were not at the highest. They were basically services that were able to be cut within the city budget that saved us money that weren't really used and highly used by the city residents. So those were their first to cut and saving us money over the years. But we've done all we could do with city services. And unfortunately, we are at a time to where we're under a crunch with finding solutions for city revenues that are coming into the city of Hazelwood. And we're at a time to where we're discussing many employee layoffs, which creates our employee morale and uncertainty of their jobs. I'd like to say that the city is daily thinking about, and city council and staff thinking about how we could save those jobs. But we have to start somewhere, and we are sorry that we are in this position and sorry for the uncertainty of the city services, not only with our residents, but our uncertainty of some of the jobs that our city employees are concerned with. Hazelwood, like many other cities across the St. Louis region and country, are facing financial crisis unlike anything we have ever seen before. The City of Hazelwood and council members are asking you to weigh in on the proposed 2021 potential revenue sources. We think that the information that we received back at our last city council budget meeting, or the citywide budget meeting that we had last week, I was just going over it. We had a lot of very good responses. We're still trying to respond to some of the questions, but it helps the city council and staff to take a quick survey. It's something that we didn't really understand how it was going to work out when we first started our Zoom meetings, but it is working out fairly well and getting the input back from the residents. So I appreciate all that you have filled out and asked questions and how you participated in the last Zoom meeting. And we certainly encourage you to participate in this one. Cuts in new revenue will not completely solve the issue, but they will help us continue to work for a long-term solution. I and the rest of the city council are very interested in what you have to say regarding your priorities and preferences on how we can face this crisis together as a community. And now at this time, I'll go ahead and start the webinar with Mr. Matt Zimmerman, our city manager, to take over. Matt, could you maybe report on COVID-19 first and the opening of City Hall, and then move on with the budget report?
Yes, thank you very much.
Just a second. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen because I need to pull up the correct PowerPoint. So go ahead and you can do your COVID update right now. I just wanted to let everybody know what I was doing.
All right. Thank you, Becky. We appreciate that. And thank you, Mayor, as well. We certainly appreciate your comments. I also want to echo the Mayor's comments. These are very difficult times. We have spent many years trying to keep our budget balanced while trying to maintain services and maintain employment. Unfortunately, the trend has been bad for a number of years, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then with COVID, that's really caused the bottom to fall out. And so that's why we are asking the public to take some time to give us their their feedback. The council will be considering all of this at the June 3rd meeting as we start to make final presentations for our budget. Regarding COVID-19, we continue to follow the guidelines as set forth the protocols set forth for us by St. Louis County. As part of that, we will be opening city facilities on June 1st. That will include City Hall, Public Works Garage, and police stations and fire stations, as subject to all of the security protocols. At this time, that will not include the community centers, the pools and pool and spray ground, and then our other park facilities, like our playgrounds and so on and so forth. The parks themselves have always remained open, subject to, again, following the separation protocols of at least 6 feet as well. So we will have City Hall open starting next Monday, June 1st. We'll be open our regular hours, 8 to 4:30. It will require residents who are coming in to use a mask, just to protect the safety of the public and our employees as well. And so we look forward to being back in the office. We will be continuing to maintain our furloughs through the end of June, which were part of our budget savings that we've been trying to implement because of the significant fall off of revenues in April and May. So we will have an opportunity to sort of balance the budget, see where we're at, and then we can make our determinations regarding that. However, our first priority is always providing the best services. We have continued to work remotely. We have provided all of the same services as much as we can, excluding, again, some of the community center programs. And then lastly, we are working on a protocol for reopening the pools. We received a lot of questions about that. We just received the protocols from St. Louis County at 2 p.m. today. They are being reviewed, and we're seeing if we can come up with a practical and cost-effective plan to open the pools. But it is certainly our desire to open the pool this year if we're going to be able to. So is there anything else you'd like to add, Mayor, about the COVID-19?
Hold on, Mayor, I've got you muted.
Oh. Okay. So,
Mayor, can you unmute yourself? There you go.
You're okay. Matt, you're okay to go ahead.
oh, okay. So, and certainly we have a Q&A at the end of this presentation. We hope the presentation won't be more than 30 minutes, which should leave us about 30 minutes for questions and answers as much as possible. If you have any questions about COVID-19, we're happy to answer those as well. So I will be leading the presentation on the 2021 budget and our current financial situations. There will be several times you'll be asked to participate in live polls regarding potential service cuts or alternative revenue sources. And while you're not required to, your feedback is appreciated. The City Council will be watching them. They do not participate in the surveys themselves. However, we do have a number of council members attending this, so they can hear your comments and hear your questions. They will also receive a report prior to the June 3rd budget meeting on all of the, on the comments we've gotten, the feedback we've gotten, the poll results that we are getting as well. So we would encourage you to please participate in the polling unless you have done so at the last meeting. We would like to not have double the responses from the same individuals. So please do not do so if you have previously responded to the survey either at the last meeting, May 18th, or on our online surveys. I will remind you too that this is being recorded and will be put on our Fair Budget website at hazelwoodmo.org/fairbudget within the next 24 hours. You can also go to that website to read up on the budget information presented and to take the survey. You can also call 513-5018 and leave a message, and they will send you a paper survey, or you can ask for a paper survey on the website and we'll get that sent out to you right away. So to get started, the city gets 40% of its revenue from various sales taxes, 16% from property taxes, both residential and business, 16% from licenses and permitting, 10% from utility tax, and 18% from all other sources, including revenue from parks and recreation programs. One of the questions, we can go to the next slide, please, Becky. One of the questions we've been getting a lot about is about tax abatements. And tax abatements are tools that cities all across America use to help recruit jobs and businesses. And so as part of a development agreement, a tax abatement means that that business or development, as a condition of moving to Hazelwood, are not required to pay certain taxes in exchange for bringing those jobs and paying other taxes and fees. And so it's very difficult in today's environment to get new development unless you're offering some level of tax abatement. This is, I want to make very clear, this is not taking money out of the general fund, because abatements are used in a but-for situation. This new project wouldn't happen but for the tax abatement. And so what we're doing is foregoing future revenue gains, which will eventually come as the tax abatement ends and the project comes on the tax rolls. And the city does this, one, because we're looking for more jobs and good paying jobs, but also we do generate other general fund revenue from business use taxes. So for example, last year, we earned over $1.24 million in business use taxes and gained 3,000 additional jobs since we started our economic development program. So there are some real benefits to this as well. Unfortunately, tax abatement is usually part of this. We do have other development opportunities that we will continue to market and promote. And we do assume that the pandemic is having an economic impact that will continue to affect new developments. For example, we get a lot of questions about Powerplex. And we're still very excited about that project. We would like to see that project move ahead. Right now, it is very, very difficult to get funding for any new projects, especially projects that are backed by sales taxes, because of course sales are going down. So we continue to work with the developer, and we hope to see that project to come to fruition. It's just a very difficult time. And that's just one example of the impact that the pandemic is having. In addition, we've had a lot of questions about tax abatements and the effect on the fire districts. While the tax abatements do apply to all governmental agencies, in 2018, the Missouri legislature did pass a law that says that fire districts are allowed to collect up to 100% of any property taxes that have been abated. So that's an issue that's already being addressed. It has already been addressed by the General Assembly. So slide 8, please, Becky. We also want to address the questions we received regarding fire service taxing rates. All Hazelwood residents, no matter where you get your fire service from, whether it's the Hazelwood Fire Department, Florissant Valley Fire District, or Robertson Fire District, you pay 92 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, and that provides funding, or about 16% of the funding, for all city services: police, fire, code enforcement, street maintenance, those kinds of things. And that's the only thing we control, is what the property tax rate is, and then the budget that supports. Robertson and Florissant Valley, they set their tax rates. Their current tax rate for a residential property is $2.40. And for Florissant Valley, it's $1.62 per 100 for assessed valuation. Because they set their rates, and then we are required under the way that the law and the contracts are currently structured, we have to pay them that difference. So obviously, if we're collecting 92 cents in property taxes and paying out $2.40 or $1.62, that makes a difference. We have some other revenues that have tried to offset that, including the voters did approve back in 2014 a fire service sales tax, which brings in about $780,000 annually, which helps to cover some of those costs. Unfortunately, as those costs have gone up, our revenues have not been able to match that, even with the new taxes that have been adopted. And now, as we are looking at the 21 budget, the fire service costs from the Hazelwood Fire Department and the 2 fire districts make up 40% of our overall budget. And that is a very large percentage. For example, University City is 14% of the budget. So makes a big difference, and that's part of what we're struggling with as we're dealing with that, and we are certainly trying to work on that as we work on all sorts of scenarios. So taking a look at slide 9, Becky. Did we lose Becky? I don't see her. Okay, it looks like she got kicked off and has to get restarted here for a second. She'll have it up. So while we're waiting for that slide, and we'll continue to move ahead with our presentation. So we've had, as I've said, our budget has been a little bit imbalanced for years. We continue to make one-time revenues to help balance the budget. We've been eliminating certain costs, which I'll address in a moment. And so, but it's been structurally unbalanced for a while now. And then with COVID, we are now estimating that we are going to lose another $5.7 million in revenues, $1.5 million for the fiscal year that is ending June 30th, and then another $4.2 million for the next fiscal year, which starts July 1 and ends June 30th, 2021. So obviously losing 5.7 million from in budgeted revenue has taken this and just caused everything to fall off the cliff. And now we have very, very deep deficit and not nearly enough reserves to cover that. I do want to also point out that even without the COVID numbers, the first draft of the budget, when we were preparing it back in March, we were showing a $3.6 million deficit. So this has merely expanded an existing problem very significantly. We believe that those revenues will mostly come back by the time we get into 2022, but that's not enough to get us through the immediate crisis. And that's why we're going to have to make either additional revenues or change our expenses. That's why, again, we appreciate your feedback. This has been exacerbated by an expected $900,000 increase in fire protection district payments and a 20% increase in health insurance costs and work comp liability. We have been working very hard with our health insurance. 2 of the last 3 years, we've had no increase in the rates because we've changed our health insurance plans. We've changed either what the deductible and out-of-pocket is or the services that are covered. Or the types of options that employees have to try and keep all of those costs down. I see there's a note, I believe, to you, Mayor, about making Becky the host. Is that correct, Becky?
Say that again. I was having some technical difficulties.
Yes. I saw a note saying, Matt, please make me host. So I assume that was to the mayor.
Becky is now a host again, so she should be able to get the PowerPoint up.
Okay,
and if not, I have it on backup.
Give me like a minute. I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know what happened, but Zoom got angry.
Well, my apologies to all of our participants. I see we have a lot of participants again tonight, and we are very pleased and very excited to have that. So we're apologizing. Let me also apologize for our technical difficulties. Shall I continue on, Becky, while you're pulling that up then?
Which slide would you like it on?
I believe we are now up to slide 12.
All right, hold on, and I can do this. I think we're good.
Okay, so thank you very much again. So, bottom line, after me prattling off lots of numbers that sometimes can seem a little confusing or really boring, and I apologize, sometimes I'm a bit of a budget nerd, I admit. What we are now looking at is a budget deficit of $8 million for the 21 fiscal year. And while we do have some cash reserves, we're going to need to either cut expenses or raise revenues by about 2.2 million to make it through next year. That is a very significant portion of our budget. And while this is a short-term solution to a long-term problem, it gives us a little more time to make additional changes to our budget and to our contracts. Gives us an opportunity to hopefully start to restore some of those revenues. Again, if we can get revenues to come back another $4 million for the next fiscal year, that obviously, it doesn't eliminate the deficit, but it obviously helps address some more of the long-term solution. So we're really trying to figure out how do we get through really the next 12 months or so is what we're really focused on. So let's talk a little bit about what we've done so far. Next slide, please, Becky. So even before we had the COVID-19 hit, we saved $1.3 million, or 15% in administration costs. Most of that was from eliminating 11 positions that were unfilled or were transitioned out. We have also not included in next year's budget are cost of living increases. We usually give raises every other year, either a cost of living increase or a step increase, and we are showing no raises for the next fiscal year. And we have also suspended certain capital projects in both 20 and in 21 because our capital fund is also funded by half-cent sales tax. As sales are going down and sales taxes are going down, we'll have less money. So we are still figuring out what exactly projects we will do. Obviously, our debt payments we will continue to make, and other projects that are far along in the process, we are going to continue, but you will see a definite reduction in our capital program. In addition, as we started to sort of make our post-COVID plans, and you've already heard some of this earlier tonight, we started an employee furlough plan on April 23rd, 6 full-time, 35 part-time, 15 seasonal part-time, and 65 pool part-time employees are being furloughed for at least 10 weeks or the end of June. Obviously, as we look at the pool, those people may come back because it's generating revenue. 55 employees were furloughed for 1 day a week, resulting in a 20% pay cut for 10 weeks. So those overall savings are going to be saving the city approximately $275,000 just for this fiscal year. So we are taking certain steps already, but clearly that's not going to be enough to cover our $8 million deficit. Next slide, please, Becky. So here's how our budget works. It's a total of $28.4 million, of which 8% is for public works, 11% for parks and recreation, of which then there are some offsetting revenues from park programs, 12% for administrative costs, such as legal, financial, permitting, code enforcement, and so on, 30% for the police department, 18.5% for the Hazelwood Fire Department, 17% for the Robertson Fire Protection District payment, and 4.5% for the Florissant Valley Fire Protection District payment. So since, again, we are contracted to make those payments to the fire districts, what we're really talking about are the 79% of the budget that we control. So we will be taking a look at this. As I said, we will be discussing this at the June 3rd City Council meeting about ways of either increasing revenues, which I'll talk about in a moment, or cutting expenses by $2.2 million. And this is where your help is going to come in. Next slide, please. So we have put together a list of potential, what we call small cuts, things that are more related to the administration of the organization. Those total about $224,000. So it's like the city fireworks program. We've already canceled the program for 2020 because of the social distancing rules. This would be about the 2021 program. The swim instruction, our food truck events, our summer camps, hazelnuts funding, all of those things are all being considered as part of the budget cuts. Now, to give so that the public has some options, we have put together another list that in total would bring us up to about about 3 million in cuts. Next slide, please. So as you know, we've already cut our administrative staff by 15% and not filled 11 positions. So those cuts are already in place and we're still $8 million behind. So some of the things we are looking at include combining within city management and the city manager's office and the finance department, which would allow us to reduce staff by 2 positions. We are looking at, in the police department, at possibly the audio technical officer that keeps track of all of our body cameras and all of our vehicle cameras, the animal control officer position, which would mean that any animal control calls in an emergency would have to be handled by the police department, or we'd have to go to the county, or you'd have to hire someone in the private sector to take care of an animal problem. Looking at the vacant police, looking at certain police officer positions, one of which is currently vacant. The DARE program, which would mean that we are not going to have as much in-school programs and drug prevention programs. Our Regis crime data support, and lay off up to 15 police officers, which would be 4 officers per shift. What that would mean is we would be responding basically only to emergencies, or we would be taking a lot more phone calls. So if you need to file a report, we would do that sort of remotely by phone. And then our officers on the street, we're going to be responding mostly to only emergencies that are going on out in the field. In the fire department, we are looking at eliminating the deputy fire marshal position, which would mean that you would, inspections have to be performed by the firefighters, which would happen a lot less often. You would be looking at reducing the number of captains from 6 to 3 and having those back into firefighters, laying off 3 firefighters, and reducing our callback time, which as a net result of any time right now, if anyone is off for any reason, vacation, sick, training, we call in someone else, so we can always have a 4th person on the fire truck. This would mean that we would, in those events, which would be most of the days, we'd have 3 men on a truck. And while this is the most common, we've always been proud of being one of the very few towns in St. Louis County that is always making sure that we're maintaining 4 firefighters on a truck. And we go back to more of the standard St. Louis County number of 3 persons on a truck. In Public Works, we'd be looking at laying off 2 code enforcement officers, which would mean that you'd have a much shorter, or much longer, response time for getting inspections done. 2 of the support staff, 1 of our maintenance workers positions, and then also reducing our salt usage in the winter, which would mean that we'd have less snow plowing and more slippery roads. And so again, we would providing the bare minimum service, so we might be going out less often and then trying to sort of finish up cleaning the streets at the end. In Parks and Recreation, we're looking at eliminating the senior bus, closing Civic Center East with all of those jobs that are currently over there, eliminating all of our non-revenue generating programs that are very popular. The Easter egg hunt, the kids the kids love that. Halloween happenings, very popular with a lot of families. Our art fairs, a lot of our sports programs, it'd be much more focused on maintaining those revenue generating programs. If we did close Civic Center East, we would move as many of those programs over to the community center over on the west side. But again, the focus would be on those programs that pay for themselves or come close to paying for themselves. That's the programs we would have to focus on maintaining. So I know that's a lot. I apologize if I spoke too fast. Again, I tend to rattle this stuff off a little bit because I do this all day, every day. So we are certainly encouraging people to be asking questions, and we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end of this session. So now that we've introduced the proposed cuts, we were going to ask everyone the first of 6 poll questions. So if we can launch that poll question, please, Becky. Thank you. We would like everyone who is participating, and again, if you participated previously, either online or at last Monday's meeting, please do not participate again. Which of the city services and programs on the screen have you utilized? Please click the box next to each option for for every program that you have used, and then click on none of these if you have not used any of them. When you are done, please click the red submit button when you are finished. This will help us better understand if those votings on call have used the city services we are considering for the service cuts, and we appreciate your feedback. Give you a chance to finish that. We will also be reading off the poll results that we get from at least our initial feedback. Again, I want to remind everyone we'll be collating all of the surveys and bringing that report back to the council next week. So, Becky, do we have our poll 1 results?
Yes, I'm going to end the polling right now. Go ahead and we can share the results. It looks like police service, fire service, and leaf and limb collection are the 3 that are used the most right now.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you to the public. Now we are going to review some of the city services and programs being considered for elimination. So if you would submit, or would you please put up poll number 2, Becky? So we would like you to select up to 3 services by clicking on the box next to the option. Click the same box again if you'd like to undo your selection, and then scroll to the bottom and click the red submit button when you are done. Our question is, if given the choice, which city services do you prefer the Hazelwood City Council to continue to fund? Not cut, but to continue to fund. Again, you are limited to 3 options only, and then submit click submit at the bottom when you are ready. So those options include closing Civic Center East. That would save us about $240,000 a year. The DARE officer, which would save us about $47,000 a year. The non-revenue generating park programs like the Easter egg hunt and Halloween happenings, about $33,000. Leaf and limb collection, which is about $49,000. The animal control program, which is about $61,000. Reducing the fire service, which would save us about $558,000. The police force, which would save us over $1.35 million, or the senior bus, which would save us $30,000 a year. So we'll give you a few more seconds. Hopefully you've been voting which ones of those you would like to keep. So we'll give you just a few more seconds, please. All right, I think that's enough time. So Becky, can you read off our poll results, please?
All right, so fire and police service are our top 2 with 78%, followed by animal control, and real close behind is leaf and limb collection. They're almost neck and neck there.
All right, excellent. All right, thank you very much. If you want to launch the next poll, please. So it's basically the same options, but it's a different question. If given a choice, which city services would you prefer the Hazelwood City Council to vote to reduce or eliminate funding? Please remember, again, you only have 3. You can only select 3 options. You can click, and then if you're not sure you like that, you can click it again and it'll go away. Once you have your 3, please click the red submit button at the bottom. So we'll give everyone a little bit more time here. Again, we appreciate everyone's participation. We certainly will be happy to answer any questions that you have. Also, we've had a number of people submit questions through the online survey, and those that we have not responded to yet, we will be responding to you before next week with specific answers to the questions that you have. So we will give it just a few more seconds. Okay, very good. Becky, can you put up our poll results, please?
All right, so the top choice is Civic Center East, followed by the Halloween happenings, Easter egg hunt, art fairs, sports programs, and the leaf and limb collection.
All right, we're getting some consistent results then. That's good then. Poll number 4, if you would please put that up. We also are looking at some revenue options. We are considering having a couple of items on the August ballot, but there also are other options that we could look at down the road a little bit. So we have put together some workable options for you. All of them will require voter approval, just to be clear, so that the council isn't just going to implement a new fee increase or a tax increase without voter approval. Please note that without new revenue sources, then the Hazelwood will have to reduce or eliminate existing services, or it has to be some combination of increased revenues and decreased expenses. The council did vote already to put increasing the fire sales tax rate from 1/4 cent to 1/2 cent, and also looking at some service area specific revenue options on the August 7th ballot. However, there may be other options moving ahead, and we'd like to know, is the public interested in more revenues or less expenses, and what types of revenues? So we have the 4 of the options. I believe you put that up, Becky. All right, thank you very much. The first would be to increase the residential property tax by up to 24 cents. We did receive a question, why 24 cents? And the answer is we are limited in the amount that we can levy, and 24 cents is what's left under that state cap as to what could be levied. To increase the fire sales tax, I'm sorry, the property tax would generate about 1.3 million. The fire sales tax would generate about 780,000 each year. We could look at implementing a residential utility tax of up to 6%, which matches the non-residential utility tax rate, and that would generate also $780,000 per year. We have conducted a survey, and most of the towns in St. Louis County do have a residential utility tax. That would add about $3 per month to the typical Hazelwood residence bill. And then the next option is to increase the non-residential utility tax rate. Our current rate is 6%, and to increase it would generate about another $425,000 for each 1% increase. We're currently at one of the highest, but certainly not the highest compared to several other towns for the non-residential utility tax rate. And then your 5th option is none of these. So we'll give you a few more seconds to complete your voting. Again, please select as many options as you would like, and then when you're done, click submit.
Give it another few seconds. We still have answers coming in.
All right, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll.
Thank you.
And it looks like most of the respondents would support a residential utility tax, followed by a non-residential utility tax increase and a fire sales tax.
All right, thank you. And now for poll number 5. We are getting very close to being done, I promise everyone. And so the question, as Becky is putting that up, is if you had a choice, now that you've had a chance to see the list of proposed cuts and possible citywide revenue options, which action would you prefer? Would you prefer to increase revenue? Would you prefer to reduce expenses and eliminate services? Some combination of both? Or of course you have the no preference, or I don't know, I need more information. So we will ask you to take a second to click which option. You are limited to only one. So please click that and submit red. And then Becky, when you're ready, if you can call up those poll results.
All right. We still have some answers coming in, so we'll give another 10 seconds or so. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So it looks like about 49% would support a combination of both raising taxes or revenue and eliminating services, followed closely behind by increasing revenue. And then about, well, it looks like we're even there at 5% for not sure and reducing services.
Okay.
I didn't realize I didn't share those results. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So you did a good job reporting on them as well. So that's good. And then our last poll question, I promise you, and it is very simple, is we just want to get a little information about who all is participating. And so some of the questions, if you can put that up, please, is whether or not you're a Hazelwood resident or business owner or other. We certainly, and then we're asking for your zip code because we want to see where the poll results are coming in from. And then try and keep the response, get the most dedicated response for those who live within the city limits of Hazelwood. So when that's done, please click the red submit button.
All right, I'm going to give it another 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. So that's the last of our poll questions, and that's the end of our presentation. We wanted to make sure that there was plenty enough time for questions. We will answer those questions that we can. There may be some that we simply can't answer. There may be others that we've already answered, and please go to our website again, hazelwoodmo.org/fair budget, and you can see a lot of the answers. So some of those ones we've already answered before, we may not answer tonight, but please go to the website and you can see those answers. We do understand that these are difficult times that are going to call for tough decisions, and we do appreciate your thoughts and feedback. Again, I want to remind you that you can also see this webinar or our first webinar on our site, again, hazelwoodmo.org/fair budget. And so we are going to turn it over for Q&A. So Becky, I think you're going to be getting those questions and asking them, some of which you'll answer and some I may answer.
That's right. So our first question is a very specific question about page 33 on our 2020 budget that shows a $4.4 million increase in part of the fire department budget from 2019 to 2020.
Yes, so we had put the payments to the Robertson Fire Protection District in the fire department budget instead of its a separate line item for fire districts. We have now moved that back in the budget back to the fire district payments. So it's really the same amount, other than the payments going up by $900,000. It's just where we budgeted for it.
How long is the average tax abatement?
They do vary. That's a great question, and they vary. We certainly, every deal is unique to itself, so it depends on how big the project is. It depends on the level of revenues that might be generated, how many jobs are going to be generated. We have had, and quite frankly, we are becoming not only less and less granting of tax abatements, but they become shorter. So, for example, when the old Ford plant, Aviator Park, was approved back in 2008, that tax abatement is for 25 years. For the two newest industrial parks, Hazelwood Logistics Center and Hazelwood Tradeport, those are 18 years. And there's a 50% tax abatement for a little bit more than half of those. So it's not a full tax abatement for part of that. We've also started making those developers pay us a fee in lieu of some taxes. So they still get tax abatement, but they pay us a little bit of money through a pilot payment is what we call them. And then for some that are small projects, they can be as little as 3 to 5 years. So it really all varies depending on the project.
Do city employees share any of the cost of their health care insurance?
It's the city's longstanding policy that the city will pay 100% of the monthly premium for single coverage, and we will pay 50% of the difference between what the cost of single coverage premium costs are and anything else. So for any kind of family coverage, we pay 50% of the difference, and that's pretty standard here in St. Louis County.
Could some of these positions, as well as some of those that are not being eliminated, get a pay cut?
As you know, we have implemented a 10-week furlough that has been done. That is currently in place. I don't think that's realistic in order to be able to not only keep our employees, but to be at all market competitive to keep those pay cuts going indefinitely. That is certainly a possibility, but some of that is also going to we're going to have to get feedback from the unions as well. So, and we know that some towns, their unions have agreed to that. So that's certainly something that can be further explored.
Would the Civic Center East closure be permanent or temporary?
At this point, it would probably, we would consider it to be temporary, but it would be indefinite of a temporary nature until such time as we were able to either get our underlying costs under control or get significantly more revenue.
Have city administrators received pay increases in the last several years? And can you clarify if upper salary people received pay increases?
So every one of our employees, except for the city manager and the city clerk, are on a pay plan. As I stated earlier, those employees every other year get a step increase. Then every other year they've been getting a COLA, which has been averaging right around 2%. The city manager has not gotten an increase other than a COLA for each of the last 4 years.
And just as a clarification, COLA is shorthand for cost of living adjustment.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I do fall into the habit sometimes of using acronyms, so thank you.
That's okay. We love our alphabet soup. All right. So why does the budget show multiple items being funded by the Economic Development Fund that are unrelated to the economic development for Hazelwood? What is currently being done for economic development to make Hazelwood more self-sufficient?
Do you want to answer that as the ED director?
So economic development is more than just businesses come and yay, you know, we've got businesses. There's a lot that goes into economic development we have weekly meetings with some developers. We have, we're active in the chambers around the area. We, you know, a lot of the infrastructure, you know, so infrastructure projects around the business parks and around like the powerplex, that's all part of economic development, is creating that infrastructure so that businesses can come in and build and be successful. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's well said. I will also say that under state law, up to 20% of the revenues can be used for administrative costs. The city has been utilizing that to help offset the problems in the general fund. So it's been very helpful to the general fund. And then at least 10% must be used for capital improvements every year. So that's why we have to go in and do the streets and stuff in the industrial parks like you talked about.
And some of that administrative cost also helps support the economic development program with, you know, different communications and, you know, like a police officer, that kind of stuff. So.
And I apologize, I misspoke. It's 25% for administration and 20% for capital. So I apologize.
Are there any grants available to get more revenue, especially from COVID impacts?
We are working very hard to try and restore some level of funding through some of the federal grants. Every one of those grants that has been approved by Congress and signed by the president have specifically excluded giving money to municipalities. They have limited it to states, and some states, including Missouri, are giving some to the county. The city council did approve a resolution last week asking the county to give some money to the local municipalities for our ongoing police and fire costs. We are hopeful that we might get some money out of that, but at this point, every law, every funding has specifically excluded municipalities from that revenue. But we keep trying.
How does the proposed police layoff affect staffing?
It would be a significant hit within the police department. You would be seeing fewer officers on the street. You would be seeing much more. We'd be eliminating most of our preventative programs and many of our community outreach programs. You would be seeing a very basic level of policing service of dealing with emergency responses and some minimal level of preventative patrols, such as for within high crime areas within the community, high being relative term, of course, or traffic enforcement programs. You would see very minimal of those as well.
Right. So does the city own the Civic Center East building? And if so, would we be selling that building, or is that a consideration?
The city does own that building, and we own the credit union next to it that we've been using primarily for parking. If it had appeared long term we were not going to open that building, we would definitely consider selling that building.
Will a merger of fire services offer relief?
It would. If ultimately the voters were to agree to basically be annexed into the fire districts and be paying the taxes to them, or some level of merger that does the same thing, that would be a very large relief to the budget concerns of the city.
Right. So if we are in such a financial deficit, why rebuild Village Square? So I can take this one and you can chime in if you want to, Matt. So Village Square is owned by the developer Somera Road, and they are the ones that are redeveloping it and rebuilding it. We're working with them on that because if we can get that redeveloped and built back up, then it brings in more retail stores, it brings in more offices, it brings in places like restaurants and coffee shops that would potentially locate there, and then that adds sales taxes into our general fund that we can then use to keep building up our economic development program, but also just our general fund with paying employees and continuing a lot of these services.
The only thing I would add is, and there's no tax abatement associated with redevelopment of Village Square.
All right, so with the green lighting of ticketing folks that are speeding, running lights, racing down roads, using expired or temp and regular tags help increase the funding?
It could a little bit. We do already have priority enforcement areas when it comes to traffic control. Every neighborhood always would like to see more, and we're aware of that. So we tend to move those traffic controls around. I can tell you, as a person who drives down Hazelwood Road to work, I'm always seeing the officers out there right now as there's been less traffic, so the speed has definitely gone up. If you've gone to our website, you've seen some of the stories about people going over 100 miles an hour on 270. So we are out there. However, that even if we were to have a complete saturation task force all day, every day, and that would start to become not productive as people found out about it, that would only be generating a few tens of thousands of dollars a year in court fines.
Wouldn't cutting the police coverage have a very negative effect on our ability to continue with economic development?
Businesses look at a lot of factors, and certainly security is one of them. Most businesses, though, take their own business security into account when they're making their plans. So I don't think it would have that much of an effect on economic development. But I think that the perception of the community would be detrimental, and I think that would be certainly another impact that we have to consider.
All right. Can we put something on the ballot to merge the fire departments and pay the same as Hazelwood?
There is no provision at this time to do that unless it's voluntarily done by the fire districts, which is something we have talked to them about.
All right, so I know that, let's see, it's 8:26, so we've got a few more minutes for some questions. So if you've got questions, go ahead and make sure you get them into the Q&A part of the box for us. If we don't get around to answering these questions tonight right here, we will get those answers up on our website. So we have another question. Why are we not hard billing residents for ambulance service?
It has been a longstanding policy of the city that if you do take a Hazelwood ambulance, then we will bill you. If your insurance company pays, we expect your insurance company to pay it. If they don't, then we have not ever taken the position that we would bill them. We have always considered that to be sort of one of the core services that we provide to our residents. So certainly that could be something we would look at. I don't think, and certainly this is a question we will check into, but I don't think it would generate a whole lot of additional money. I believe most of our ambulance claims are paid by the insurance companies.
All right. I think that's all we have. Oh, hold on. We do have a few more questions. So will the leaf collection and limb chipping services be discontinued?
That's one of the options the council will consider next week.
All right. All right. I am an employee. We had in the past been receiving step raises per the pay plan every year, but due to pay cuts that fell aside, will they be reinstated at a later date?
Certainly that is something that the city would like to look at. We have not been doing every year step increases since I believe 2010. That was the last year that they were occurring. And then we made no raises until 2015 from 11 through 14. And then, like I said, we've been alternating them. And I think if the budget ever gets more secured, that's certainly something we will definitely take a look at.
Okay, give it a second. We'll see if we get any more. But I think that's really right at time for us.
Well, again, thank you for our patience during some of our technical difficulties. Unfortunately, sometimes that just happens, but we thank everyone for participating. We thank our mayor and city council for also helping to host this. Mayor, do you have any other last comments before we go?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. In close, I'd like to thank everybody for participating. I'd like to thank Matt Zimmerman for doing such a good job with Rebecca and staff and our communications people that put this survey together. It is very important that the council hear from residents and employees and understand what they're feeling and help them understand exactly what we're doing here at the city level with budget cuts. And with these questions and answers, hopefully can answer those for them and a little bit more at ease of understanding what we're all going through here. This was something that we were experiencing cuts prior to COVID-19. That we knew we had to restructure our fire services, which we have been negotiating daily with either merging or consolidating fire services. And Mr. Zimmerman and our attorneys have been discussing that daily. So that's a daily change. The fire districts are acceptable to working with us to try and restructure the fire services. So we are coming to some negotiations that have some lightened impact to the city and the revenues in the future, we hope. So please pay attention to those, and certainly we have our elections coming up that we will have to decide. Like we said earlier, we've already put the fire sales tax on the ballot and neighborhood improvement district, which we'll be reviewing and possibly removing from the ballot or leaving on at a later date. But as far as some of the questions that were asked, certainly everybody's concerned with their city services, and it's nice to see that our city residents out there are concerned with the layoff of the employees. We're trying to come up with other ways or asking questions of other ways that we could fund their positions. So it's nice to see that we have support from our residents to increase revenue instead of having temporary layoffs or so forth that the city is facing. Once again, we are looking at, or we already have canceled the July 4th fireworks display. That has not been mentioned. We canceled that about 3 weeks ago, and I think that's important for everybody to know. If there's any other questions or anything we'd like to thank, on behalf of the City Council, I'd like to thank everybody for participating in this program. Becky?
All right, and once again, you can go online and submit more questions that you have, and we'll get those answered for you. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.